I stopped at a bar on a road trip, and I don't think that the bartender was a normal human. I was driving in the middle of nowhere, and it was the kind of road where you don't see a car for miles. It was getting late, and I was getting a little bit tired, so I decided to stop at this bar on the way just to kind of wake myself up, maybe grab a glass of water. The place looked old, not run down exactly, but just like it hasn't been upgraded in a couple of decades. There were three, maybe four people all sitting at tables, and there wasn't a TV on, there wasn't any music, it was just like a humming coming from behind the bar. I was just about to walk out because I felt weird being there, and then the bartender looked at me and he said, "Go ahead and sit wherever you like." So I sat at the bar, and I sat close, maybe a little too close to the bartender, because I started to notice that something was a little bit off with him. He would not blink very often, and when he did, it was very slow, like too slow. He asked what I wanted, and I just said I would like some water, and he looked at me and he said, "We don't get very many people passing through this late." I told him I was just driving through, and he nodded like he already kind of knew that. While he was getting my water, I kind of glanced around, and I noticed that the other people weren't talking to each other. They weren't talking to each other, they weren't talking to the bartender, but they weren't looking at their phones either. They were just facing forward. Anyways, he handed me my glass of water, and I noticed that there was no ice, there's no condensation. It was just water, super still in the cup. I still drank it. It was normal. And then he looked at me and he said, "You're welcome to stay as long as you would like." Something about that, or the way that he said it, made me feel a little uncomfortable. I asked him what time they closed, and he said, "We don't really keep track of that out here." That's when I decided I should probably go, so I pulled out my card to pay, and he just shook his head. He said, "No, you made it in. You're good." Whatever that meant. So I left, and as soon as I stepped outside, the air felt normal again. Like, it felt like I almost came or walked into a different dimension when I walked back outside. I got into my car, there was no signal, I wasn't surprised, but I did notice the time, it caught my eye, and it was 2 hours that I was in that bar, which didn't make sense because it could have been more than 20 minutes. I started driving again, and I needed gas, so I went and I stopped at a gas station about 10 minutes down the road, and I walked in and I grabbed a couple of snacks and I said, "Hey, do you have any bars nearby?" just to see what he would say. And he said, "There's not any bars nearby for at least 30 miles. And I was like, "I just barely came from one." He shook his head and he said, "You probably stopped at an old building off route." And then he stopped himself. I asked what he meant, and he said, "That place hasn't been open in years." I didn't go back to check, but I will say this. When I woke up the next morning, I convinced myself that it was just a weird stop and I was really tired. Maybe I lost track of time. It happens, right? A couple days later, I checked my bank statement. There was nothing from the bar, which, yeah, I didn't get charged. But there also wasn't anything from